In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, a coalition of advanced alien civilizations known as the Unity Accord reigned supreme. These species had mastered technology far beyond human comprehension: energy manipulation, instantaneous communication across light years, and even control over biological aging. For thousands of years they lived in harmony, their conflicts long buried beneath layers of diplomacy and shared progress. But there was one civilization they could not understand or respect: humanity. To the Unity Accord, humans were an enigma wrapped in chaos. Their history was riddled with wars, environmental destruction, and self-inflicted suffering. Even after discovering interstellar travel and establishing colonies on distant planets, humanity remained fragmented, unpredictable, and stubbornly independent. The Accord saw them as little more than pests, a nuisance that refused to conform to galactic norms. Earth itself had become nearly uninhabitable centuries earlier due to unchecked industrialization and climate collapse. Desperate for survival, humans launched massive colony ships into space, seeking new homes among the stars. When these ships arrived in Andromeda, they begged for asylum. At first, the Accord granted it begrudgingly, allowing humans to settle. On barren moons and desolate planets, no other species wanted. But tensions simmered beneath the surface. Humans worked tirelessly to rebuild their lives, mining resources, constructing habitats, and expanding their influence despite the odds stacked against them. The Accord underestimated humanity from the start. They viewed human emotions, passion, anger, ambition, as weaknesses rather than strengths. To them, logic ruled all decisions, passion clouded judgment, and so, when reports surfaced of human settlers encroaching on Accord-protected territories, the response was swift and brutal. Entire colonies were dismantled without warning, their populations relocated to overcrowded reserves where disease and despair ran rampant. Despite this treatment, humanity persisted. They adapted, improvised, and endured. On the edges of Accord-controlled space, whispers spread of a secret project hidden deep within the asteroid belt, a place called Erebus Station. No one knew exactly what went on inside, but rumors suggested it involved weaponry capable of challenging the Accord's dominance. Some dismissed it as wishful thinking, others feared it might be true. One day, a young diplomat named Kyle Vayreen of the Accord's ruling council received a message from Erebus Station. It wasn't a plea for peace or a declaration of war. It was something far stranger. The transmission contained only 3 words, repeated endlessly in broken galactic standard: "We remember everything." Kyle frowned at the screen, puzzled by the cryptic phrase. What did it mean? Remember what? Humanity's past failures, their grievances against the Accord, or something else entirely? Before he could investigate further, disaster struck. A fleet of Accord ships patrolling near the asteroid belt reported encountering strange vessels unlike anything they'd ever seen. Sleek yet jagged, the ships moved with impossible speed and precision, evading every attempt to scan or disable them. Then, without warning, the mysterious fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a single damaged vessel drifting in the void. When Accord engineers recovered the wreckage, they found traces of human engineering mixed with alien tech, scavenged from trade routes. More alarming still were the logs retrieved from the ship's computer. They spoke of a mission codenamed Reckoning, aimed at reclaiming what had been stolen from humanity. Not just land or resources, but dignity itself. As news of the discovery reached Kale, he felt a chill run down his spine. For centuries, the Accord had treated humanity as insignificant, unworthy of respect or fear. Now it seemed someone or something was proving them wrong. The hook came late that night when Kyle reviewed the final piece of data extracted from the wreckage, a recording of a voice speaking softly but firmly. "You took everything from us," it said. "Now we take back our future." And then silence. Kale stared at the screen, his mind racing. Who were these people? What did they want? And why now, after centuries of oppression, had they chosen to act? Little did he know. The answer lay not in weapons or technology, but in the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to bow, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The damaged alien vessel became the centerpiece of heated debates within the Unity Accord's ruling council. Kyle Varin stood before his peers in the Grand Assembly Chamber, a holographic projection of the mysterious ship hovering above them. His voice was calm but firm as he recounted what they had discovered. "This is not just human engineering," Kale said, pointing to the jagged design of the vessel. "They've integrated technology scavenged from trade routes. Tech, we assumed. They couldn't even understand, let alone replicate. And these logs—" He paused, scrolling through the fragmented recordings. "They speak of something called reckoning. Clearly, humanity has plans far beyond mere survival." The room erupted into murmurs. Some council members dismissed the threat outright, scoffing at the idea that humans could pose any real danger. Others leaned forward, their curiosity piqued by Kale's findings. Among them was Councillor Trellis, an elder from a species known for its logical precision and disdain for chaos. "Humans are emotional creatures," Trellis said dismissively. "Their actions are driven by fear, desperation, or misplaced pride. This so-called reckoning is likely nothing more than bluster, a futile attempt to intimidate us." Kyle frowned, but didn't argue. Deep down, he wasn't so sure. The tone of the recovered message, the cold determination behind those words, had unsettled him. Still, the majority of the council agreed with Trellis. Humanity would be monitored, but no drastic measures were necessary. After all, what could a fractured, struggling species possibly achieve against the might of the Unity Accord? Meanwhile, on Erebus Station, Commander Elena Vega stared out at the swirling asteroid field surrounding her base. She was a woman hardened by years of loss and struggle, her sharp eyes reflecting both resolve and sorrow. Behind her, a team of engineers and strategists worked tirelessly to prepare for the next phase of their operation. Elena hadn't always been a soldier. Once, she'd been a scientist, dreaming of peaceful exploration among the stars. But when the Accord dismantled her colony and left thousands to die, she'd vowed never to let such injustice go unanswered. Now, leading a coalition of survivors and rebels, she had dedicated herself to one goal: making the Accord pay for what they had done. Her second-in-command, Captain Arjun Patel, approached her with an update. "We've finished retrofitting the fleet," he reported. "Every ship is equipped with our new cloaking system and enhanced weaponry. If everything goes according to plan, we'll strike hard and fast before they know what hit them." Elena nodded, though her expression remained grim. "Good work, Arjun. But remember, this isn't about destruction, it's about sending a message. We're not afraid anymore. We won't back down." Arjun hesitated, glancing at the bustling activity around them. "Do you think they'll listen, or will they just see us as savages trying to bite back?" "They'll see us however they want to," Elena replied firmly. "But they'll feel the truth, that humanity doesn't break easily, not anymore." The Accord's complacency shattered when reports came flooding in from across their territory. Human ships, small, agile, and nearly invisible thanks to their advanced cloaking systems, began targeting key infrastructure. Mining facilities, supply depots, and communication hubs fell under swift surgical strikes. Each attack ended with the same eerie transmission: "We remember everything." At first, the Accord dismissed these acts as random sabotage, but as the pattern emerged, panic began to spread. The attacks weren't random. They were calculated, precise, and devastatingly effective. Entire sectors of space were left crippled, forcing the Accord to divert resources to defend their holdings. Kale watched the chaos unfold with growing unease. He had warned the Council not to underestimate humanity, but now it seemed too late. The damage was mounting, and the Accord's carefully constructed order was beginning to unravel. One evening, Kyle received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Lyra, a member of a lesser-known species within the Accord. Unlike many of her peers, Lyra had spent decades studying human culture and psychology. Her insights often went ignored, but tonight, Kyle welcomed her presence. "What do you make of this?" Kyle asked, gesturing to the latest report of another successful human raid. "How are they pulling this off?" Lyra studied the data silently for a moment before responding. "You're asking the wrong question," she said softly. "It's not how they're doing it. It's why. Humans aren't motivated by greed or conquest like most species. They fight because they have something to protect, something they value more than themselves." Kyle frowned. "And what's that?" "Hope," Lyra replied simply. "Hope for a better future. Hope for justice. You can crush their bodies, destroy their homes, take everything from them, but you can't kill hope. That's their strength." Kyle mulled over her words, realizing the depth of their meaning. For the first time, he understood why humanity refused to stay silent. Their resilience wasn't born of arrogance or malice. It was rooted in something far deeper, something the Accord had failed to comprehend. If on cue another alert flashed across Kale's console, a human ship had been cornered near the edge of Accord space. Orders came pouring in to capture it intact, alive if possible. Finally, the Accord wanted answers, but when the captured ship was brought aboard a research station, its crew offered only silence. Their faces bore no trace of fear, only quiet defiance. One of them, a young woman with fiery red hair, locked eyes with Kyle during interrogation. "You took everything from us," she said, echoing the haunting message from the wreckage. "Now it's your turn to lose." Her words sent a shiver down Kyle's spine. For the first time, he felt a flicker of doubt about the Accord's superiority and a creeping suspicion that humanity's vengeance was only just beginning. The captured human crew became a focal point of intense scrutiny within the Unity Accord. Despite their silence during interrogations, the Accord scientists and analysts worked tirelessly to extract information from the ship's systems. Every piece of data was scrutinized, every circuit analyzed for clues about humanity's sudden rise in capability. But what they found only deepened the mystery. Kyle Veyrin spent hours poring over the findings with Ambassador Lyra by his side. They discovered fragments of encrypted messages, blueprints for advanced cloaking technology, and even logs detailing experimental weapon designs. What struck Kyle most, however, wasn't the technical brilliance, it was the tone of the records. Humanity's notes were filled with raw emotion, anger, grief, determination. It wasn't just science, it was art, born of pain. "They're not just fighting back," Kyle murmured, staring at a particularly poignant log entry. "They're telling a story." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "Stories are powerful. They bind people together, give them purpose. Humans aren't just resisting, they're reclaiming their identity. You can see it in everything they do." Meanwhile, on Erebus Station, Commander Elena Vega faced challenges of her own. The initial success of their raids had boosted morale among her people, but the cost was mounting. Supplies were dwindling, and the constant threat of discovery weighed heavily on everyone. More than once, Elena had considered scaling back operations to conserve resources, but she knew that hesitation would mean defeat. One evening, as she walked through the station's makeshift command center, she overheard two engineers arguing over a damaged engine core. One of them, a wiry man named Jonas, slammed his fist against the console in frustration. "We can't keep this up forever. We're running out of time and options." Elena stepped in before the argument could escalate. "You're right," she said calmly. "We can't keep going like this indefinitely, but we don't need to. Our goal isn't to win outright. It's to make them understand. To show them that humanity isn't something they can crush without consequences." Jonas looked skeptical. "And how exactly are we supposed to do that? They've got armies, fleets, entire planets under their control. We're nothing compared to them." Elena smiled faintly. "That's where you're wrong. Size doesn't matter when it comes to heart, and we've got more heart than anyone else in this galaxy." Her words didn't erase the exhaustion etched into Jonas's face, but they seemed to steady him. He nodded reluctantly and returned to work, muttering something about stubborn commanders who refused to give up. Back in Accord space, the tide began to shift in ways no one anticipated. While the Council debated how to respond to humanity's attacks, reports emerged of an unexpected development. Humans weren't just targeting military installations anymore. They were reaching out to other oppressed species, those marginalized or exploited by the Accord. and offering them a chance to join the fight. On a distant moon inhabited by the Zinari, a race enslaved by the Accord for centuries, whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire. A small group of Zinari miners received a transmission from Erebus Station promising freedom if they rose against their oppressors. At first, many dismissed it as a trick or propaganda. But when human ships arrived to disable Accord patrols and provide weapons, the Zinari realized the offer was genuine. The uprising caught the Accord completely off guard. Entire mining operations ground to a halt as workers joined the resistance. Similar revolts erupted across the galaxy, each one fueled by stories of humanity's defiance. For the first time, the Accord found itself facing not just a single enemy, but a coalition of disenfranchised voices united under a common cause. Kyle watched these events unfold with growing unease. He called an emergency meeting of the Council, urging them to reconsider their approach. This isn't just about humanity anymore, he argued. They're inspiring others to rise up. If we don't address the root of the problem, the inequality and oppression, we'll lose far more than territory. We'll lose the trust of countless species. Trailis scoffed, dismissing Kale's concerns as naive idealism. These rebels are pawns in humanity's game. Once we crush them, the rest will fall back in line. But not everyone shared Trellis's confidence. Some council members began questioning whether the Accord's long-standing policies were truly just, or merely convenient. Lyra, sensing an opportunity, spoke up. Perhaps it's time we listened instead of lectured. Maybe then we'd understand why so many feel compelled to fight. As tensions escalated, humanity made another bold move. In a daring raid, Eleanor's forces infiltrated a heavily guarded Accord archive facility, a repository of historical records detailing the Accord's interactions with lesser species. When the data was extracted and broadcast across the galaxy, it revealed decades of exploitation, betrayal, and cruelty hidden beneath the Accord's facade of unity. The revelations sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Species that had once revered the Accord now questioned its legitimacy. Protests erupted on worlds previously loyal to the Coalition, demanding accountability and reform. Even within the Accord's own ranks, dissent grew louder. For Eleanor, the mission was both a triumph and a burden. She stood in the dimly lit control room of Erebus Station, watching feeds of protests and rebellions breaking out across the stars. Arjun approached her, his expression somber. "You did it," he said quietly. "You've shown the galaxy the truth." Eleanor shook her head. "Not me. Us. This is what happens when people refuse to stay silent. When they choose to stand together, instead of bowing down." Arjun hesitated, glancing at the screens displaying scenes of chaos and hope. "Do you think it's enough?" "It has to be," Elena replied firmly. "Because if we stop now, all of this suffering will have been for nothing." The stakes continued to rise as humanity's actions inspired widespread change. The Accord, once unshakable in its dominance, found itself grappling with internal divisions and external threats. Kale, torn between duty and doubt, began secretly reaching out to sympathetic factions within the Coalition, seeking allies willing to challenge the status quo. For the first time in centuries, the Unity Accord faced a reckoning of its own. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, not as victims but as catalysts for transformation. As the galaxy teetered on the brink of upheaval, one question lingered in the minds of both oppressors and oppressed. What would happen next? The galaxy was ablaze with unrest, and the Unity Accord found itself fighting battles on multiple fronts. The revelations from the stolen archive had shattered their carefully constructed image of unity and fairness. Protests erupted across planets loyal to the Accord, while uprisings among oppressed species spread like wildfire. For the first time in centuries, cracks appeared in the foundation of their empire. Calvarian stood alone in his private quarters aboard the Accord's central command station, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. Red markers dotted the display, each one representing a rebellion, an attack, or a protest, inspired by humanity's defiance. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a crisis. It was a reckoning long overdue. His thoughts turned to Ambassador Lyra, who had become both an ally and a confidant during these turbulent times. Together, they had begun quietly gathering support from within the Accord for reforms, a risky move that could cost them everything if discovered. But Kyle knew there was no turning back. The status quo had failed too many for too long. "We've underestimated them," Kyle muttered to himself, thinking of humanity. Not just their technology, but their spirit. On Erebus Station, Commander Elena Vega faced her own turning point. Despite the growing momentum of their movement, the strain of leadership weighed heavily on her shoulders. Every decision she made carried immense consequences, not just for her people, but for countless others who had joined their cause. Sleepless nights were becoming the norm, and the lines of worry etched into her face deepened with each passing day. One evening, as she reviewed tactical maps in the command center, Arjun Patel entered the room carrying a datapad. His expression was grim. "Bad news?" Elena asked, sensing the tension in his voice. Arjun hesitated before speaking. "The Accord's fleet is mobilizing. They're planning a massive counter-offensive, one aimed directly at us." Elena froze, her eyes narrowing. "When?" "Sooner." "Than we expected. Days, maybe less." Silence fell between them as the gravity of the situation sank in. If the Accord launched a full-scale assault on Erebus Station, it would be nearly impossible to defend against. Their forces were stretched thin, and resources were dwindling rapidly. This could very well be the endgame. But then Elena did something unexpected. She smiled, a small, weary smile that carried more determination than fear. "Then let's make sure they regret coming here." "What do you mean?" Arjun asked, confusion evident in his tone. Elena leaned forward, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "They think we're predictable, that we'll fight them head-on, trying to hold our ground until the bitter end. But what if we don't? What if we use their arrogance against them?" Arjun frowned. "You're talking about abandoning the station?" "No," Elena corrected him. "I'm talking about making them believe we've abandoned it. We'll evacuate most of our forces, leave behind decoys, and when they come charging in expecting victory, we hit them where it hurts." Arjun stared at her, realization dawning. "A trap." "Exactly," Elena said, nodding. "And not just any trap. Something big enough to send a message to the entire galaxy." As preparations began for the ambush, Elena called together her closest advisors. The plan was risky, requiring precise timing and flawless execution, but everyone understood what was at stake. Failure meant annihilation, not just for humanity, but for every species counting on them to challenge the Accord's tyranny. Meanwhile, Kyle worked feverishly to prevent the impending assault. He reached out to sympathetic members of the Council, urging them to delay the operation. "If we attack now," he argued during a heated session, "we risk pushing even more species into open rebellion." "Is that really worth it?" Trellis sneered at him. "Are you so blind that you can't see the threat humanity poses? If left unchecked, they'll tear apart everything we've built." "And what exactly have we built?" Kyle shot back, surprising even himself with his boldness. "An empire built on lies and oppression? No wonder they rebelled. No wonder others are joining them." His words sparked murmurs of agreement among some councillors, but Trellis remained unmoved. "Sentimentality won't save us," he snapped. "Only strength will." Despite Kale's efforts, the council voted to proceed with the attack. However, his warnings planted seeds of doubt in key individuals, including Councillor Scylla, a pragmatic leader known for her strategic mind. After the meeting, she approached Kyle privately. "You may have a point," she admitted reluctantly. "But if we're going to change anything, we need proof, not just words. Can your human allies offer that?" Kyle hesitated, unsure how to respond. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll find out." The day of the Accord's assault arrived. Massive. Warships descended upon Erebus Station, their weapons primed and ready. To their surprise, resistance was minimal. Automated defenses fired sporadically, but the station seemed eerily quiet, as though evacuated. "This is too easy," one Accord officer remarked, as boarding parties prepared to breach the facility. Inside the station, hidden beneath layers of camouflage and false walls, Elena and her team waited patiently. They monitored the enemy's movements through hacked surveillance systems, biding their time until the perfect moment. when the Accord forces split up to secure different sections of the station, Elena gave the signal. Hidden explosives detonated, collapsing corridors and trapping large portions of the invading force. Simultaneously, cloaked human ships emerged from the asteroid field, unleashing devastating barrages on the unprepared Accord fleet. Panic rippled through the Accord ranks as their carefully orchestrated operation unraveled. Ships exploded in fiery bursts while those still intact scrambled to retreat. In the chaos, Elena transmitted a final message to the galaxy. To the Unity Accord and all who follow them, your time of unchecked power is over. You took everything from us, but today we take back hope, for ourselves and for everyone you've wronged. The battle marked a pivotal shift. Humanity's ingenuity and resilience had turned certain defeat into a stunning victory. Across the galaxy, oppressed species watched in awe as the once invincible Accord faltered. Even within the coalition, voices calling for reform grew louder. For Kyle, the events confirmed what he'd suspected all along. Humanity wasn't the real threat. It was the mirror reflecting the Accord's flaws. As he gazed at the stars outside, his window, he whispered softly to himself, perhaps it's time we listened, truly listened. The galaxy would never be the same again. The aftermath of the Erebus ambush sent shockwaves through the Unity Accord. For the first time in their history, they had been outmaneuvered, not by a rival empire or an advanced alien species, but by humanity, a race they had long dismissed as chaotic and inferior. The loss was not just tactical, it was symbolic. The Accord's unshakable confidence cracked under the weight of their failure, and whispers of doubt spread like wildfire among their ranks. On the human side, morale soared. Commander Elena Vega stood in the command center of Erebus Station, watching feeds of the galactic response to their victory. Species once too afraid to speak out now openly cheered humanity's defiance. Protests erupted on worlds loyal to the Accord, demanding accountability for decades of oppression. Even some Accord-aligned factions began questioning whether loyalty to the coalition was worth the cost. But despite the triumph, Elena knew the fight was far from over. The Accord still controlled vast resources, countless ships and entire armies. Their defeat at Erebus would only fuel their determination to crush humanity once and for all. She turned to Arjun Patel, who stood nearby reviewing damage reports. "We've bought ourselves time," Elena said, her voice steady but edged with urgency. "But this isn't the end. They'll come back harder next time." Arjun nodded grimly. "And we're running low on everything. Supplies, manpower, even hope. How much longer can we keep this up?" Elena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the edge of the room, where a holographic map displayed the galaxy. Red markers showed Accord-controlled territories, while green ones represented regions rising in rebellion. The balance was shifting, but slowly. Too slowly. "We don't have to win outright," Elena finally said. "We just have to hold on long enough for the rest of the galaxy to realize that change is possible. That's how we win, not by defeating them, but by inspiring others to rise up." Arjun frowned. "That's a lot of faith to put in people we barely know." "It's not about faith," Elena replied firmly. "It's about action. We've shown them what's possible. Now it's their turn to act." Meanwhile, Kyle Varin faced his own challenges within the Accord. His efforts to advocate for reform had gained traction among certain council members, but Trellis and his allies remained steadfast in their belief that humanity must be eradicated at any cost. A heated debate unfolded during an emergency council session, with tempers flaring as both sides argued over the next course of action. "We cannot afford another mistake, like Erebus," Kale shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "If we continue down this path, we risk losing not just humanity but the entire galaxy," Trellis sneered, his disdain evident. "You talk as if humanity has somehow earned respect. They are nothing but savages using chaos to mask their weakness." "They are proving something you refuse to see," Kyle shot back. "They've exposed the cracks in our foundation, the inequality, the exploitation. If we don't address those issues, no amount of force will save us," Councillor Seiler interjected before the argument could escalate further. "Enough. Both of you make valid points, but arguing won't solve anything. What we need is a plan, one That doesn't involve blindly charging into another trap. Her words brought a brief pause to the chaos. Reluctantly, the council agreed to regroup and reassess their strategy. But Kale knew time was running out. The pressure mounted as more Accord-controlled planets declared independence, inspired by humanity's resistance. The unity the coalition had prided itself on was unraveling faster than anyone anticipated. As tensions escalated, humanity prepared for the inevitable Accord retaliation. Elena called together representatives from allied species to coordinate a unified defense. Among them were Xenari miners, exiled refugees, and even defectors from the Accord's own military. Each group brought unique skills and resources, but uniting them under a single banner proved challenging. In one particularly heated meeting, a Xenari leader named Cora voiced her frustration. "Why should we trust you? You humans started this war, and now you expect us to fight your battles." Elena met her gaze without flinching. "This isn't our war. It's everyone's. The Accord has oppressed all of us in different ways. Fighting back isn't just about revenge. It's about creating a future where no one has to live in fear." Cora hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but if we do this, we do it together. No more secrets, no more sacrifices made without consent." "Agreed," Eleanor said firmly. "Together." The Accord's counteroffensive came sooner than expected. A massive fleet descended upon a rebel stronghold near the edge of Accord space, a moon inhabited by a coalition of freed slaves and insurgents. The defenders, outnumbered and outgunned, fought valiantly but struggled to hold their ground. Elena monitored the battle from Erebus Station, her heart pounding as she watched the tide turn against the rebels. She turned to Arjun, desperation creeping into her voice. "We have to help them. If we don't, they'll be slaughtered." Arjun hesitated. Sending reinforcements meant risking their already fragile forces, but doing nothing meant abandoning those who had trusted them. Finally, he nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We'll hit them hard and fast, just like at Erebus." When the human-led relief force arrived, it wasn't alone. Dozens of ships from allied species joined the fray, answering Elena's call for unity. Together, they launched a daring assault on the Accord fleet, turning the tide of the battle. The sight of so many disparate groups fighting side by side struck a chord across the galaxy. Videos of the battle spread rapidly, showing humanity not as conquerors, but as leaders in a shared struggle for justice. For the Accord, the message was clear. Humanity's strength lay not in their weapons, but in their ability to inspire others. As Kale watched the footage, he felt a glimmer of hope and a deep sense of responsibility. "The galaxy is changing," he murmured to himself. "And maybe, just maybe, it's changing for the better." The stage was set for a final confrontation. Humanity had proven its resilience, united the oppressed, and exposed the Accord's flaws. But the ultimate test was yet to come. Could they finish what they had started, or would the weight of the galaxy's expectations crush them? Only time would tell. The final confrontation between humanity and the Unity Accord loomed large, a clash destined to shape the future of the galaxy. Both sides knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about territory or power, it was about ideology. Humanity stood as a symbol of resistance, hope, and unity, while the Accord represented oppression, hubris, and stagnation. As fleets gathered on opposite ends of a desolate star system, chosen for its strategic neutrality, tension crackled through space like static electricity. On Erebus Station, Commander Elena Vega addressed her people one last time before leading them into battle. Her voice echoed through the corridors, steady but filled with emotion. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has ever been told they are powerless. For every species enslaved, every colony erased, every dream crushed under the Accord's boot. Today, we prove that no one is too small to make a difference." Her words ignited a fire in the hearts of those around her. Engineers worked tirelessly to prepare ships, medics organized makeshift field hospitals, and soldiers checked their gear one final time. Even among the Allied forces, Xenari miners, exiled refugees, defectors from the Accord, there was a shared sense of purpose. This wasn't just a war, it was a revolution. Kyle Varin found himself caught in the eye of the storm. Within the Accord divisions had deepened to the breaking point. Some council members, inspired by Cale's arguments and horrified by the escalating violence, began openly advocating for peace talks. Others, led by Trellis, doubled down on their belief that humanity must be exterminated at all costs. The council chambers became a battleground of words, each side vying for control over the coalition's fate. During one particularly heated session, Councillor Seiler made an impassioned plea. "Enough blood has been spilled. If we continue this path, we will lose far more than humanity. We'll lose the trust of the entire galaxy. Is that truly worth it?" Trellis slammed his fist on the table. "Trust? They've shown us nothing but betrayal and chaos. Peace is impossible with such savages." But Kyle saw something different when he looked at humanity. He saw resilience, creativity, and above all, empathy, the very qualities the Accord lacked. Drawing a deep breath, he stepped forward. "What if the problem isn't humanity?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise. "What if the problem is us? We built our empire on domination, not cooperation. We silenced dissent instead of listening. Humanity didn't create this crisis, they exposed it." His words struck a chord. Several councillors exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering. For the first time, cracks appeared in Trellis's armor. He couldn't deny the truth behind Cale's statement. Not when rebellion burned across the galaxy. The battle began with a deafening roar of engines and weapons fire. The Accord fleet, vast and imposing, advanced toward the rebel forces arrayed against them. At first glance, it seemed hopeless. The rebels were outnumbered nearly 3-1, their ships smaller and less armored. But numbers weren't everything. Humanity's ingenuity shone through as cloaked vessels darted between enemy lines, disabling key targets with surgical precision. Allied fighters swarmed larger Accord ships, exploiting weaknesses identified during previous battles. Elena led the charge aboard her flagship, coordinating attacks and rallying her troops. Her calm demeanor masked the turmoil within her. Every explosion, every casualty weighed heavily on her soul. But she refused to falter, not now, not when so much depended on her leadership. As the battle raged, a pivotal moment arrived. A group of human engineers managed to hack into the Accord's central command network, disrupting communications across their fleet. Ships that had once moved in perfect synchronization suddenly found themselves isolated, confused, and vulnerable. The tide began to turn. Back on the Accord's flagship, Trellis watched in disbelief as his carefully orchestrated plans unraveled. "How could this happen?" he demanded, turning to his subordinates. "They're primitives. How can they outthink us?" Kyle, standing nearby, spoke quietly but firmly. "Because they understand something you don't. That strength isn't measured by weapons or technology. It's measured by heart, by the willingness to stand together even when the odds seem impossible." Trellis sneered but said nothing. His silence spoke volumes. The turning point came when Elena initiated a daring maneuver. She ordered her flagship to break formation and head directly for the Accord's command vessel. With shields weakened and systems compromised, the massive ship was ripe for attack. As her ship approached, she transmitted a live message to the entire galaxy. "To the Unity Accord and all who follow them, you thought we were weak, that we could be crushed without consequence. But look around you. Look at the galaxy rising, up against your tyranny. This isn't just our fight. It belongs to everyone who dreams of freedom. Surrender now, or face the consequences." Her words resonated deeply, broadcast not only to the Accord, but to countless worlds watching the battle unfold. On planets oppressed by the Accord, crowds gathered in streets and squares, chanting Elena's name. In council chambers, undecided leaders leaned toward negotiation. Even aboard Accord ships, doubt spread among soldiers questioning why they were fighting. Trellis, enraged, ordered his flagship to engage Elena's vessel. But before the attack could commence, a contingent of Accord officers mutinied, seizing control of the bridge. They contacted Elena, offering surrender in exchange for amnesty for defecting personnel. Trellis was dragged away. His reign of arrogance finally ended. As the Accord fleet withdrew, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity had triumphed, not through sheer force, but through unity, ingenuity, and unwavering determination. Kyle watched the scene unfold, a mixture of relief and awe washing over him. For centuries, the Accord had dismissed humanity as insignificant. Now they were proving that true strength lay not in domination, but in connection. In the quiet aftermath, Eleanor stood on the bridge of her ship, staring out at the stars. Arjun joined her, his expression somber yet hopeful. "We did it," he said softly. Eleanor shook her head. "Not yet. This is just the beginning. The real work starts now." And as the galaxy prepared to rebuild, one thing was certain. Humanity had changed the course of history forever. The galaxy was quiet, its silence heavy with the weight of change. The Unity Accord's retreat marked the end of an era, but it was not a victory celebrated with fireworks or parades. Instead, humanity and their allies gathered in somber reflection, knowing that the road ahead would be long and difficult. The scars of war ran deep, on planets devastated by conflict, among species struggling to rebuild, and within the hearts of those who had fought for freedom. Commander Elena Vega stood on the observation deck of Erebus Station, gazing out at the stars. Her hands rested lightly on the railing, her fingers tracing invisible constellations as she thought about all they had sacrificed to reach this moment. She wasn't alone. Arjun Patel stood beside her, his usual sharp demeanor softened by exhaustion and relief. "We did more than win a battle," he said after a long pause. "We changed everything." Elena nodded slowly. "But changing something doesn't mean fixing it. The Accord may have backed down, but the damage they caused over centuries won't disappear overnight. There's still so much work to do." Arjun glanced at her, concern etched into his features. "And what about you? What happens now?" She smiled faintly, though there was sadness behind her eyes. "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll step back, let others take the lead, or maybe I'll keep fighting, not against anyone this time, but for a better future. Either way, I can't stop here, not when we've only just started." Meanwhile, Kyle Varin found himself standing before the newly reformed Unity Accord Council. The once unified coalition was fractured, its members divided between those seeking reform and those clinging to old ways. Trellis had been stripped of his position, his influence reduced to whispers in dark corners. In his place, Councillor Sila led efforts to rebuild trust with the galaxy, guided by Kale's vision of equality and cooperation. Kale addressed the council, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "For too long we ruled through fear and control. We told ourselves it was for the greater good, but we ignored the cost. Today we have a chance to start anew, to listen instead of command, to uplift instead of oppress. Humanity showed us. That strength lies not in domination, but in connection. Let's honor that lesson." His words resonated deeply, earning nods of agreement from many council members. It wouldn't be easy. Centuries of ingrained habits couldn't be undone overnight. But for the first time, there was hope. The Accord began reaching out to former enemies, offering reparations and rebuilding aid. Slowly, cautiously, bridges were built where walls once stood. Across the galaxy, humanity's actions inspired profound change. Oppressed species rose up to reclaim their autonomy, forming new alliances based on mutual respect rather than dominance. On worlds once loyal to the Accord, citizens demanded accountability from their leaders, pushing for reforms that prioritized justice over power. Even some former Accord officers defected, joining the movement to create a fairer, more equitable society. Elena traveled to these places whenever possible, meeting with leaders and survivors to share stories of resilience and hope. She became a symbol not of vengeance but of unity, a reminder that even in the darkest times, people could come together to build something better. One evening, during a visit to a Zenari settlement, Elena met Cora, the rebel leader who had once questioned humanity's motives. Now Cora greeted her warmly, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You gave us a voice," she said, "not just to speak, but to dream again." Eleanor shook her head. "No, you gave yourselves that voice. All we did was remind you it was always yours." Cora smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Still, thank you. Back on Earth, humanity's fractured homeworld began to heal. Colonists returned to rebuild cities ravaged by climate collapse, armed with knowledge and technology gained from their time among the stars. For the first time in generations, there was hope that Earth might flourish once more, not as a relic of the past, but as a beacon of possibility. In the heart of one such city, a young girl sat on a hill overlooking the horizon. Her name was Amara, and she had grown up hearing tales of Commander Vega and the revolution that changed the galaxy. As the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, she whispered to herself, "One day, I'll go out there. I'll see the stars and tell my own story." Years later, Kale visited Erebus Station as part of a diplomatic mission. The station had transformed from a hidden base into a thriving hub of collaboration, where humans and alien species worked side by side to forge a brighter future. Eleanor greeted him warmly, her demeanor lighter than he remembered. "You've done incredible things here," Kyle said, looking around at the bustling activity. "We all have," Eleanor replied. "It's not about me or humanity. It's about what we can achieve when we stop seeing differences as weaknesses and start seeing them as strengths." Kale nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Before leaving, he asked one final question. "Do you think the galaxy will ever truly heal?" Elena looked out at the stars, her expression thoughtful. "Healing isn't about forgetting the past, it's about learning from it. And if we keep listening, keep working together, then yes, I believe it will." As Kale departed, he carried with him a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had proven that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire bright enough to light the entire galaxy. And in that light, anything seemed possible. The stars shimmered above, silent witnesses to a new chapter in galactic history, one written not by rulers or conquerors, but by dreamers and builders. Together, they had chosen a path. Forward, together they would walk it.